Hello, everyone, to my channel. I'm Rafid Jabouri, and with me today is Dr. Ahmed Jameel Azem, a Palestinian academic, writer, a professor, and also member of the Palestinian parliament. Dr. Azem, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Rafid, for having me.
You're welcome. From the first moment, this attack, the Hamas attack, or rather the Qassam, the military wing of Hamas attack on Israel, was labeled as an act of terrorism. As a Palestinian academic, as a Palestinian voice, how do you see that? And how do you explain the wider Palestinian point of view to the world?
Yeah, without the context, the historical context and the political context, we cannot understand what had happened. Hamas strike happened 17 years after the sanction and the closure of Gaza Strip. It happened after more than 75 years of the Nakba or the catastrophe. More than half of the Palestinians who live in Gaza Strip, which means including the fighters who was part of the 7th of October operation, were refugees, came originally from the land they quote unquote attacked, where they have been. So the area, the villages, the towns that inside the north of Gaza Strip is the origin villages and areas of those refugees and the members of Hamas. For the Hamas movement, if we went back how it was established, and this is very important. Hamas is the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the biggest Islamist movement in the Arab world or in the Muslim world. But it was established in 1988, which means 40 years after the Nakba. So what I want to say that the Palestinians tried peaceful and diplomatic and political tools for many years. In 1948, 750,000 Palestinians became refugees. They were kicked out from their homeland through massacres, through by force, and they tried the Arab official political, let me say, tools and methodology, if I can say, until the 1965 when they launched their armed struggle. And who launched armed struggles were not Islamists. They were secular. They have the idea of having one democratic state for all of its inhabitants, Jews, Muslims, Christians. This is what the Palestinian armed struggle organization's blueprint that was announced in 1968, 1969. But 40 years without having any solution, Hamas was established in 1988, and it was actually a minority movement. It wasn't really a popular one until mid 1990s.
Let's stop here, Dr. Azem. We'll be back to this. We'll be back to this, you and me. But let's stop and bring you back again. I know that whether you are a Palestinian academic or a Palestinian man on the street, ordinary person, ordinary Arab even, you would like to speak about history when it comes to this attack or any flashpoint in the conflict. But also, the world expects shorter answers. Forgive me for saying that, but the world has seen the attack, Israeli casualties, civilian casualties, and would like to listen to a shorter answer, something that doesn't bring back the whole history. I know this is kind of cruel to be said to a Palestinian who suffered throughout history, but that's the world we live in. That's the time and age we live in. how do you address the attack of Hamas and the civilian casualties, which of course brought up wide Western condemnation, whether by governments but also by ordinary people here in the West?
First of all, it is very important to understand what had happened on the 7th of October.
Yeah.
We read a lot of news that became a fake news later. Mr. Biden, the American president himself, mentioned a few stories. Then they apologized, and it turned out that it is not accurate. So
oh yes, you are referring. We need to explain that, because this is very important. He mentioned something very strange. He said half confirmed pictures. He was talking about the alleged photos of beheaded Israeli children, and he used that term, that strange term. And when we as journalists asked the White House whether the president was shown pictures of that nature, the answer was vague, referring us to Israeli media. So this was a very important moment to highlight. But that still, even that doesn't deny the fact that there were Israeli civilian casualties on October the 7th.
Yeah, sure. There were civilian casualties, and we need to know exactly what had happened, where they were a target. I am not defending Hamas here, but I am defending the truth and defending what's really to reach an accurate understanding for what had happened. Many stories that been published, I think we need to verify. I am not saying I am denying anything. We are saying that we need to understand what had happened exactly. While I am talking to you, less than 2 weeks after the 7th of October, we have more than 5,000 Palestinians were killed. We need to understand civilian, and the overwhelming majority of them were civilians, maybe 1/3 the children. We need to understand what really happened, what is happening in the 7th of October and after that. I think this is a fair thing to ask. It is not something that it
and
is
you think
out.
This hasn't happened yet?
Sure, it doesn't happen. For example, we saw that Mr. Biden also accusing that he's saying what he named other team were responsible for bombarding the Al-Ma'madani hospital in Gaza. Also, we still didn't have any neutral international body that can tell us what had happened. Sure, nobody is happy with any conflict, or especially conflict with civilians became as victims. But also we need to know exactly what had happened and why, and we should have one standards. We should not have double standards in terms of Palestinian civilians and Israeli civilians, and to understand who really were fighting who, and we need to know all the parties and know exactly what had happened. I think if there is a peace process, if there is a political process, we will not reach this point.
Okay, on that, I'm sure that you heard many in the West who dealt with the Palestinian issue, with the Palestinian negotiations with Israel or even America, saying that it even became a saying: the Palestinians don't miss a chance to miss a chance. That's a kind of Western label on Palestinians, that it's them who were wasting chances for peace. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's part of creating a very fake and unjust image for the Palestinians. Let me talk out of personal experience. For 5 years at least, the last 5 years, I was as a Palestinian academic writer and also as an activist maybe. I met many diplomats. I met many academics who are close to the official, formal and official governmental bodies in the in the EU countries and the American administration. We heard time after time the last 5 years that you should not be optimistic. You should not be. You should know that the international community and the world is not busy with you. Once they are busy with Corona, once they are busy with Croatia, and also we have been told that the Arab countries are now normalizing with Israel without even mentioning your cause. So you should be modest. You should accept that the best you can achieve is some daily and the daily life better conditions, and this is what you can get. You cannot get more than that. This is an advice I myself heard time after time. So I don't think that we lost any chance. The Palestinians signed agreements. It was in Israel that the Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated. It is in 1994 that the massacre of Hebron happened, after 1 year after less than 1 year after the peace accord. And we still, I think even today, up to this moment, the Palestinian president and the government still committed themselves to the peace accord. If there is a peace process, I think we will not be here at all discussing this topic. But Israel itself, and this government in particular, mentioned many times that they don't accept the principle of Palestinian state. And we have two ministers in this government, at least, who said we don't recognize that there is a Palestinian people. Smotrich, the finance minister, who is a minister in the defense ministry also, said many times that he doesn't recognize the existence of a Palestinian people. And he said the options, this is in the media, he said this, that the options we have a Palestinian as either to be part of serving the Israeli economy, part of, as a cheap labor, or to leave. This is the offer we have from them. So what opportunity in this we can lose?
Yeah, let me tell you, this government, this current Israeli government, is undoubtedly the most right-wing government in the history of Israel. But before that, you were referring to the peace process. In 1993, the Palestinians, led by Yasser Arafat, of course, signed a peace agreement with Israel, with the government of the late Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. Then Rabin was assassinated 2 years later by an extremist in Israel, in protest of his peace effort. And then, of course, things deteriorated. But in the year 2000, here in America, a few miles from where I'm sitting right now in Camp David, Yasser Arafat was offered a peace offer by a center-left Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, a former general too. That was the offer that was rejected by Arafat, and then after that, you know, a second intifada followed and things. That was also an example cited by those people who accused you, the Palestinians, of wasting chances and not missing a chance to miss a chance. That moment, would you address that moment in history, the Camp David, Arafat, Barak, Clinton summit and the offer?
So it's good that we now not saying that we missed many opportunities, and that we are talking about the year 2000 and Camp David summit, and that we agreed that Rabin was assassinated by an Israeli Jew who is against the peace process, and that we have Qana massacre after that by his successor Yitzhak Rabin in Lebanon, and we have Netanyahu came in 1996 and tried to change the whole peace process, and he said that he is not agreeing on that. And we have Netanyahu there for 20 years. Going back to Camp David. In Camp David, I think the peace process was still in place. And by the way, Camp David happened in the late 2000. In the early 2001, the peace negotiations continued. It was continued in Egypt. And the Palestinians were very positive at that time. I think it is legitimate for President Arafat when, for example, I will give you one example.
But that was an important moment, Dr. Azem, because a U.S. president invested so much. And you know that the Palestinian issue is so difficult, and without an investment by a U.S. president, it wouldn't have, you know, it takes that scale of involvement to move a little bit?
Yeah, it's important to know. Yeah, the negotiations in Camp David 2000 was, let me say, more or less positive. There were points of disagreements. One of the points for disagreement points, for example, Mr. Arafat, President late Arafat, when he was told or offered a map that we will divide Jerusalem with Jewish neighborhoods for Jews and Arab and Muslim neighborhood for Jews. Nevertheless, in 1967 or even before that, there were no Jewish neighborhoods. He asked for maps. I think this is very legitimate. He asked for maps, and this is continued. In Taba 2001, January 2001, negotiation continued, and it was really actually close to reach an agreement when what happened, what stopped everything? It is the Israeli elections and electing Sharon as a new prime minister, came here prime minister, and he stopped everything.
And the
Ehud
rest is
Barak was
history. Back to
so
Hamas now.
negotiations was the Camp David negotiations was still going on until January 2001 when the Israeli state elected a right wing government that refused and wanted to go to zero again.
Yeah.
And if we go back to Ehud Olmert, sorry,
Yeah.
who was the successor of, he is was right wing and he is the successor of Sharon, Israeli prime minister. He himself is confirming every day that there were negotiations and it was positive, and that Mr. Abbas didn't refuse what he was offered, but they were still negotiating. When again the Israeli state elected Netanyahu and elected a right wing government that refuses to have any Palestinian state or any halfway solution.
Now, Hamas, we have been hearing since the attack a theory that Hamas was actually and counterintuitively originally supported by Israel. We heard that by Prince Turki Faisal, the Saudi member of the royal family and senior official in Saudi Arabia. We heard that from even Professor John Mersheimer here in the States. We heard that from Mohammed Dahlan, a Palestinian leader who's based in the UAE, all referring from different angles to that theory. What do you think? Did Israel really support Hamas, created Hamas?
Yeah, this is very important and interesting question. Israel supported Hamas and they gave her opportunities several times. Not because they have a special relation with Hamas or because Hamas is having a special deal with Israel. It is because of this is a divide and rule game. Israel now, I am reading now a new idea by some Israeli officials who they said that they will construct a new security regime in Gaza after the war. This is the idea was actually an Israeli idea started at least 1972 when they arranged municipality elections in municipal elections in West Bank and Gaza in order to create a new Palestinian leadership, a leadership that doesn't ask for any political rights. This has happened in the 1980s. There was something called the League of Villages. Also, it was the intention was to create a new leadership that accepts a daily life improvements without any political or national rights. Then in let me say in 1988, when Hamas appeared and established, there was this idea that if Hamas became a little bit stronger, there will be a division inside the Palestinian political community, and that there will be a kind of balance between Fatah and Hamas. This is why Israel, for almost 2 years, tried to give Hamas opportunity to work. Then, when they saw that Hamas will be also a resistance movement, they deported hundreds of the leaders of Hamas from the West Bank and Gaza in 1992, if I remember well, but early 1990s, to the south of Lebanon, an area called Marj al-Zuhur there. And Hamas was established again later after its leadership deported. And then again, when this rift between Hamas and Fatah happened in 2006 and 2007, the Israeli policy, and here I can refer to an analysis published yesterday by the New York Times on this point, that Israel wanted to have a kind of continue with Hamas, containing Hamas. So the Israeli policy, let me say, that we have two authorities, one by Fatah in the West Bank, one by Hamas in Gaza, both of them weak, both of them strong enough to continue to stay, to survive, but weak to have any say against the occupation. So yeah, for years we saw.
And this is happening. This theory is it succeeded according to your narrative. It succeeded.
It succeeded for years, but not on the 7th of October. Mm-hmm. What happened for years, that Israel was facilitating moving or transferring amounts of money, cash money, by boxes, by bags, coming to Gaza from Qatar and elsewhere. It was by the signature of Netanyahu. Netanyahu was signing that this money can go and can be distributed in Gaza. Also, there are some other agreements, like accepting workers to go and work in Israel from Gaza. Some Palestinian manufacturers in Gaza worked as a subcontract for Israeli factories. And this is how Israel tried to keep Hamas there, but to keep it weak. And maybe this is an opportunity to clear what had happened. What had happened in Gaza, that we have military wing and we have political wing. We have the civil authority that were suffering, people without electricity, without water, without freedom of movement. There is a closure. People cannot go out, travel outside Gaza, while the military wing actually, who has its power, its finance source coming from Iran and otherwhere, developed and managed to build the structure we saw on the 7th of October. And this is what had happened. So Israel, always the Israeli policy is doing everything except reaching a political settlement. Israel never offered really a political settlement for the Palestinians. The Palestinians accepted, and here maybe we have to clarify, accepted in 1988 and 1993 that Palestinians will accept 22% of what is called the historical Palestine, the mandate Palestine, as their state. And that they will recognize, and they recognized Israel to stay on the 78% of historical Palestine. Actually, more or less, the whole international community recognized that West Bank and Gaza occupied territories, occupied in 1967, and the Palestinians wanted this territory for their state. But this was refused time after time by the Israeli government, and the game of divide and rule, this is what is happening between Hamas and Fatah.
Yeah, but we have to say here, we have to clarify on my side that Hamas is still, when we say that, it is still a Palestinian movement. It still has support within the Palestinian society. So when the Western government says Hamas is a terrorist organization, what's going to happen next? Hamas still rules territory, and the Israeli goal of destroying Hamas is not going to be easy. It's not. It never happened that a whole movement was destroyed by a military campaign. So we are headed towards a gloomy future.
Hamas gained popularity gradually. because the peace process didn't work. And because, for example, 2 years ago, the Palestinian president decided public elections, legislative council and presidential elections. And this is according to Oslo Accords. Israel have to accept these elections and have to facilitate elections in Jerusalem. Israel refused to facilitate elections in Jerusalem, and the elections cancelled. So the whole political process is not there. Hamas, again, it's a Palestinian movement. It is gaining popularity. And here is the problem, or here is the game. When you are saying that the war is from Israel against Hamas in Gaza, this is really misleading. You are targeting everything except in Gaza, all the civilians, and maybe I dare to say you are mainly targeting everything except Hamas. Because Hamas as a military movement and Hamas as militants know how to defend themselves, not the poor civilians who have no refuge, no place to hide, nothing. Gaza is a very small. Gaza is 1% of the historical Palestine. So what is happening now that everybody saying that Israel is attacking Hamas? No, Israel is attacking all the Palestinians. My students, my friends who are killed in the last 2 weeks in Gaza, I don't know anyone who belonged to Hamas among the dozens of people who killed, and I know personally in Gaza.
What's going to happen next?
Unfortunately, I can see that the whole international community, including the Arab regimes, are doing nothing. So what is happening now, a massacre that will continue for some time by the Israeli army, who is targeting civilians. This is what is happening. The idea of resistance will continue as long as there is an occupation.
Iran and Hamas, do you think Iran will come to Hamas's help, or even the Palestinians' help in this crisis?
Yeah, it's possible if we have a larger wars, especially if we have Israeli troops going inside Gaza, maybe this is happening. And here is the problem, that while we have Israel having their army and target and developing their plans, we have Hamas, Iran, Hezbollah are developing their also choices, while the international community, the United States of America, the EU countries, and the Arab states, they are not developing anything. There is no choice. So there is a vacuum happening in the vacuum. A political vacuum is a very dangerous one are developing in the region.
And you still believe that, because I know from before that you still believe that the Palestinian Authority has future, because increasingly we are looking at polls that the Palestinian Authority, which controls the West Bank, is losing support by Palestinians. Many more Palestinians now think that the Palestinian Authority should be dissolved.
No, I think the Palestinian Authority is already under attack by the Israeli government. It is under sanction for many years. The international community doesn't support it. It's keep forcing conditions against the PA. The PA is losing its power, its popularity, and this will continue. But more important, a political solution, reaching political settlement is still possible even with Hamas. Hamas, if we go to Hamas documents and Hamas political, let me see, blueprints, and they accepted. In the 1st of May 2017, they announced that they accept the two-state solutions. Hamas itself is accepting the two-state solutions. It's accepting the long-term truce, what they call. There is a possibility, if the international community wanted to reach a political settlement, even Hamas can be a partner.
What we hear here from the international community, from President Biden and other Western leaders, is that Hamas, in its founding documents, in its manifesto, declares clearly that its goal is to kill Jews, which makes it not just radical, but even racist, according to that definition and that reference.
I think they have to read the documents of Hamas again. especially the documents appeared in 1996 and 2017. No, Hamas, I remember reading the founding document of Hamas while I was a university student, and it was referring to a positive relation. I am not defending Hamas. I am not a pro-Hamas, by the way. Maybe you know this, but according to the Hamas program, they defending a good relations with other religions.
So an invitation to read more, whether in Hamas's
Yes.
document or in anything, reading maybe is a way for peace.
Reading and dialogue and be serious about international law, about United Nations resolutions, apply them, and to be serious about having a political process that lead to a Palestinian state.
Dr. Ahmed Jameel Azem, a Palestinian academic and writer and professor and member of the Palestinian Parliament, thank you very much.
Thank you.